McDonald's was bustling with people coming and going. Ling Ling idly fiddled with her scarf, feeling more and more amused at the absurdity of the situation. Seriously? Who in their right mind has a blind date at McDonald's? She glanced around, contemplating an escape before her date arrived. But her mother's stern warning from that morning suddenly echoed in her mind. Ugh, so annoying, Ling Ling muttered under her breath, already scheming her exit strategy. Just as she raised her head, a familiar figure caught her eye. The man wore a black wool coat and a gray scarf around his neck. His sharp, handsome face beneath silver-rimmed glasses gave off an aloof, untouchable vibe. But the icy exterior melted almost instantly. Two adorable children clung to his coat, pointing at a poster on the glass window and chattering excitedly. He smiled and nodded, holding each child's hand as they walked directly toward her. Ling Ling's heart skipped a beat. She ducked under the table like a thief caught red-handed. Soon, a familiar voice sounded in front of her.
Sorry.
I'm late. Ling Ling thought he was talking to someone at the next table and ducked even lower. Hee, Andy, are you playing hide-and-seek? Two soft little hands rested on her shoulders, exposing her completely. Haha, what a coincidence. Bringing the kids for burgers. Ling Ling rubbed her burning face, grasping for something to say. Yeah, I'm here for a blind date today, he replied coolly. Oh, what a coincidence. Me too. Ling Ling's mind raced as she replayed her conversation with her mother that morning. She regretted not catching on sooner. Then again, she couldn't entirely blame herself. Over the years, her mother had introduced her to so many blind dates that it had become a blur. Ling Ling had never been married, but she had met all kinds of men. There were the self-proclaimed average guys with no self-awareness, the mama's boys pretending to be CEOs, and the selfish types looking for a live-in maid. The rest either didn't find her appealing, or she found them unbearable. Initially, Ling Ling had been optimistic about finding someone to share her life with, but her patience had been worn down over time. Eventually, she adopted a whatever. Hi, I'm Ling Ling, a freelancer with unstable income who, for health reasons, can't have children in this lifetime. That was usually enough to send her dates running for the door. The less polite ones would curse outright. What the hell? You're wasting my time. Someone like you shouldn't even be dating. Ling Ling thought she'd become immune after so many encounters. Yet somehow, she hadn't picked up. So, Gaoxing began, rubbing his hands nervously. I asked to bring the kids along for the date. After all, if they don't like the person, I can't move forward either. That makes sense, she nodded, understanding. They scrambled to manage the two kids, helping them eat and settling them in the play area before finally sitting down to talk. Gaoxing was as honest as ever. He shared his job and family situation openly. He spoke about his career moves to return to his hometown, the tragic accident that had claimed his wife's life, and the challenges of raising two kids alone. Ling Ling listened quietly, her mind drifting to the past. His calm, clear voice brought back memories, intertwining them with her emotions and drawing her into a bittersweet reverie. But love made the struggles bearable. Ling Ling managed their modest life with care, while Gaoxing worked tirelessly to build a future for them. If not for what happened later, they might have had children of their own by now. I've heard a bit about your situation from your mother. Gaoxing suddenly shifted the topic, his gaze piercing.
She?
What did she say? Ling Ling asked nervously, lowering her head instinctively. She said the reason you've stayed single all these years is because you couldn't let go. Let go of what? Let go of me, Gaoxing said firmly. Ling Ling, I know we were young back then and made mistakes. I understand that now. Thank you for your kindness. Ling Ling abruptly stood. But I don't think I did anything wrong. If you're trying to forgive me from some savior complex, no thanks. I don't need it. Oh, and one more thing. She suddenly turned back. With that, Ling Ling strode out of the restaurant, leaving a stunned Gaoxing behind. Outside, snowflakes danced in the air. Ling Ling reached out to catch them, only for one icy flake to sting her eye, triggering tears she had held back for years. 10 years ago, it had also been a snowy afternoon. She had called Gao Sheng repeatedly, but he hadn't answered. Regret mingled with relief as she sent him a carefully crafted message before blocking all his contacts. 2 weeks later, he showed up at her door, disheveled and weary. "Why are you breaking up with me? What did I do wrong?" he demanded, gripping her shoulders desperately. Ling Ling brushed him off with a cold smile. "What's so surprising? You don't have a house, a car, or enough for a dowry. What do you expect me to do? Starve with you?" "I told you, just give me a few more years, and I'll give you a good life," he vowed. "Too late. I can't wait anymore." She pushed past him and walked into the dark stairwell without looking back. 5 years later, she heard about him again through a mutual friend. He had moved back home to care for his elderly parents, married a woman from a well-matched family, and had a pair of adorable twins. Life seemed good. "Do you regret it? Missing out on such a good man?" the friend teased. Ling Ling, busy packing her nail tools, only smiled faintly. What was past. All she could give him now was her blessing, nothing more. Even now, she didn't regret the choice she had made all those years ago. When Ling returned home, her mother had just come back from picking up her little nephew from school. "So, how was it? Did you have a good chat with Xiao Gao?" her mother eagerly asked. "Mom, why didn't you tell me earlier?" Ling blurted. "If I had told you it was Xiao Gao earlier, with your temper, would you have even gone to meet him?" "Of course not," Ling thought to herself with a touch of sarcasm. After ushering her grandson into his room to do homework, Ling's mom sighed deeply and started speaking earnestly. "All these years, we haven't mentioned it, but I've always felt guilty about it. Especially Xiao Rui. Mom, why are you bringing this up now?" Seeing her mother on the verge of tears, Ling quickly comforted her. "We're family. Isn't this all something I should do?" "So, now that you've met Xiao Gao again, do you think the two of you could get back together?" Ling didn't answer for a moment. Finally, she sighed and said, "Forget it. I shouldn't hold him back." "What do you mean, hold him back?" "He doesn't have a wife now and is raising 2 kids on his own. In the dating scene, not many people would even consider someone in his situation." Ling suddenly caught the undertone in her mother's words. "So, you think that because he's like that, and I'm an older woman who can't have kids, we're a perfect match because 2 negatives make a positive?"
What?
"What are you trying to say?" Before her mother could finish, Ling grabbed her coat and walked out of the house. She crossed 2 streets, bought some skewers from a barbecue stall, and stepped into Rui's fruit and vegetable shop next door. "Xiao Rui, haven't eaten yet, right? Come, join me for a bite." "Coming." A sturdy man with tanned skin appeared from behind stacks of boxes. Seeing Ling setting after a few rounds of drinks, their small talk turned into deeper conversation. "Big sis, Mom told me you want to meet Brother Gao Sheng?" Rui asked, his face slightly flushed. "Yeah." "And?" Ling rested her chin on her hand, teasing him. "And what?" Under her gaze, Rui looked nervous and hurriedly explained, "I mean, do you think you two might get back together?" Ling shook her head and picked up her beer again. Rui downed his drink in one go and angrily pounded his leg. "It's all my fault. If you hadn't saved me, you and Brother Gao would have." "Xiao Rui," Ling grabbed his hand, locking eyes with him, and said firmly, "We agreed never to bring up the past again. But, sis, you've had it so hard." Tears welled up in Rui's eyes, and he broke down, sobbing into her lap. Ling stroked his head, feeling a wound she thought had healed being ripped open. Ling was supposed to drive them home, but there were leftovers from the banquet. Her mom insisted on packing them up, so Ling stayed behind to help. Their father, eager to get to bed, drove Rui home himself. No one expected tragedy to strike on the way. By the time Ling and her mom rushed to the hospital, they were met with their father's lifeless body and a critical condition notice for Rui. Back then, Ling felt like the sky had fallen. Not wanting to drag Gao Sheng into the mess, she broke up with him. One day, as she was giving a client a manicure, an unfamiliar number popped up on her phone. Thinking it was an ad, she glanced at it and ignored it. But the caller was persistent, dialing over and over again. "Hello, who is this?" Ling finally answered politely. "It's me, Gao Sheng. Are you free today?" Ling glanced at the phone, startled. They had made things clear. She'd even blocked his number. Why was he reaching out again? "No, I'm not free," she replied curtly and hung up. Moments later, Gao Sheng sent a text. "Sorry for upsetting you with what I said the other day, but I really need your help right now." Standing at Yet Gao Sheng didn't hesitate to put her to work, his tone completely matter-of-fact. "Ling, you hold Yuan while I carry Xian. Let's get to the hospital quickly." Like a robot following orders, Ling accompanied him as they juggled two children through a whirlwind of. By the time they got back home, it was already 11 p.m. After putting Yuan to sleep, Ling quietly stepped out of the bedroom to find Gao Sheng waiting with a bowl of noodles. "Exhausted? Here, eat something." Looking at the simple tomato and egg noodles in front of her, Ling felt a lump in her throat. Back when they were dating, money was tight. This humble dish had been their go-to dinner. Sitting at a small table in their rented room, they'd laugh and eat, oblivious to the hardships. "I really appreciate your help today. When Yuan had a fever, she kept calling for her mom. I didn't know what else to do." Gao Sheng began. "But you have to tell the kids the truth eventually," Ling gently advised. "You can't keep this from them forever." "What about you?" Gao Sheng suddenly looked up. "After we broke up, you disappeared for a whole year. What were you doing?" "I looked for you everywhere, even went to your house multiple times, but no one knew where you were. Don't I deserve to know the truth?" His tone was calm, but caught off guard. Ling visibly panicked. "That's ancient history. Why dwell on it? Your priority now is to take care of Yuan and Xian so their mom can rest in peace. Anyway, it's been a long day. I should get going. You should rest too." "Ling," he called after her, pausing for a moment before adding, "Thank you for today." "Don't mention it. I must have had a momentary lapse of judgment," she muttered before hastily leaving. Ling decided she couldn't see Gao Sheng again. The past she thought was buried had resurfaced, and his questions today made her realize she'd never truly escaped her nightmare. If she had a choice, she'd never have let things end up this way. That night, Ling started to develop a fever after returning home, possibly from catching a chill. Her body felt as hot as a furnace, and she occasionally muttered nonsensical words in her delirium. In her haze, she seemed to see her younger, more naive self being taken into a luxurious villa. The place was as extravagant as a castle from a fairy tale. The crystal chandelier in the middle of the living room sparkled so brightly that she could hardly open her eyes. She huddled in a corner nervously, afraid to touch or break anything she couldn't afford to replace. "We already know your basic circumstances. If you have no objections, sign here." A middle-aged man on the sofa puffed on a cigar and gestured for his wife to hand over a contract. Ling fidgeted with the hem of her clothes. It took her a long time to summon enough courage to ask, "If I sign, will the money be transferred immediately?" The middle-aged man and his wife exchanged a glance, then chuckled. "Of course, that's what you care about most," he said mockingly. Ling's face flushed with embarrassment, but she lifted her chin high until she received a definite answer. Only then did she step forward cautiously to sign and press her fingerprint on the contract. She never expected that carrying a life within her would be so agonizing. Morning sickness tormented her relentlessly, leaving her worn and haggard. Her once smooth skin was marred with stretch marks. Her nose swelled, and her once radiant complexion dulled. Countless times, she stared blankly at the reflection of the pregnant woman in the mirror, only to slowly realize that it was herself. Yet, no matter how miserable she felt, she forced herself to smile and carry out every instruction from the clients. This constant feeling of having no autonomy made every day feel like a year. Soon, the time came for her to give birth. For the first time in her life, she lay on an operating table, fully conscious as the doctor's cold scalpel cut open her abdomen. With the sharp cry of a newborn baby, her mission was finally complete. Ling, you are amazing. The baby is perfectly healthy and adorable, the woman next to her said, patting her head with a smile. Ling's teary eyes followed the nurse. She caught sight of the tiny baby, fresh from her womb, crying loudly with closed eyes. She opened her mouth, wanting to ask for a closer look, but the woman had already rushed over to hold the baby and show it off to her family. Something's wrong. She's hemorrhaging. Ling suddenly heard the doctor exclaim. In no time, her consciousness began to fade, her eyelids growing heavier. Various sounds buzzed around her, and she wanted to do something, anything, but she was powerless, tears streaming down her face in fear. Through her blurry vision, she thought she saw Gao Sheng rushing toward her. He angrily demanded to know why she hadn't told him, why she had done something so degrading to herself. She shook her head and cried, raising her hand to touch his face, only for him to slap it away. Gao Sheng, she called out with all her might. Ling, wake up. Suddenly, Gao Sheng's voice sounded right beside her. She grasped the hand on her shoulder and burst into tears. I'm sorry. I had no choice. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. Ling, wake up. It's me. Gao Sheng shook her again. Ling opened her eyes and realized it had all been a dream. She quickly pulled her hand back and used her pajama sleeve to wipe her tears. What are you doing in my house? She asked. Oh, your mom called to say you were sick. She had to help Xiao Rui at his shop and couldn't take care of you, so she asked me to come, he explained, adding, I'm on leave today anyway, so I figured I'd return the favor for your kindness the other day. Your mom left some porridge on the stove for you. I'll go get it. You should eat something and take your medicine, he said before heading to the kitchen. Ling watched his back, speechless at her mother's decision. Her mom must have been truly desperate to swallow her pride and ask Gao Sheng to look after her daughter. The house fell silent, so quiet you could hear a pin drop. They sat across from each other, awkwardly avoiding eye contact. Taking a deep breath as if making a difficult decision, Ling finally spoke under Gao Sheng's puzzled gaze. Gao Sheng, you've always wondered why I suddenly broke up with you back then. I'll tell you the truth today. That year, my dad caused a car accident. He passed away before even making it to the hospital. Although Xiao Rui survived, his legs needed immediate surgery, or he'd never be able to walk again. But my dad had been drinking and driving, and he killed someone. My mom had to sell our house to compensate the victim's family. As the eldest daughter, I couldn't just watch Xiao Rui become paralyzed for life. You could have told me. We could have figured it out together, Gao Sheng interrupted. You had no obligation to clean up our mess. Even if you were willing, what could you do? And would your parents have let you stay with me if they knew? Gao Sheng lowered his head. Ling was right. Anyone would have been scared off by her family's predicament. And as an only child, Gao Sheng's parents would never have let him shoulder such a burden. Then he hesitated before asking, how did you eventually raise the money? He regretted the question as soon as it left his mouth. What respectable means could an ordinary girl use to gather? Sure enough, when Ling uttered the word surrogacy, Gao Sheng stumbled back a step in shock. Looking at the faint scar on Ling's abdomen, Gao Sheng felt as though he had been pulled into a thick fog. The woman before him still seemed as kind, genuine, and radiant as a sunflower. Yet he couldn't grasp the full truth of who she was deep down. He thought he knew her well, but today he realized she was far more complicated than he had ever imagined. Ling seemed relieved after telling her story, paying no attention to Gao Sheng's shocked expression as she continued. During the delivery, there were complications and I lost my uterus. So, I'll never have children of my own in this lifetime. Fortunately, the client was compassionate. When they paid the final installment, they gave me double the amount as compensation. I used that money to open shops for myself and Xiao Rui, so I guess everything worked out in the end. Now that I've told you all this, you should understand why I've been avoiding love and marriage. It's not that I don't want it. I just know no one would accept me as I am. All right, you should leave now, Ling Ling said, handing him his coat from the rack. Let's not contact each other anymore. We're better off living our own lives. Gao Sheng walked out of Ling Ling's small courtyard in a daze, still reeling from what he had just learned. He had thought Ling Ling broke up with him because she was a gold digger looking to marry rich. After all, her dream back then was to buy a big house and bring her parents to live in the city. He had blamed her, but he never imagined her story would be so tragic. He wanted to make up for lost time, but Ling Ling refused to give him a chance. Let's just leave it at that, she had said. We don't owe each other anything. I hope you find peace in your life, as I will in mine. Ling Ling felt that life was like a strange circle. The more you tried to avoid something, the more it came your way. Ever since she had strictly forbidden her mother and Ling Rui from contacting Gao Sheng privately, traces of him seemed to appear around her constantly. At the annual high school reunion, which she had never missed, Gao Sheng showed up this time. At her best friend's baby shower, there he was again. Even one of her nail salon's clients turned out to be Gao Sheng's cousin. This is so bizarre. Why do you keep showing up everywhere I go? Are you doing it on purpose? She couldn't help but ask. Gao Sheng, ever composed, pointed to two children playing on the nearby lawn. It was my little Yuan Yuan who told her aunt that your nail designs were beautiful. That's why my cousin went to your salon.
I didn't even mention you.
Ling Ling felt her face heat up in embarrassment. She remembered how Yuan Yuan had been captivated by her manicure the last time she had cared for her. On impulse, she had mentioned her occupation and the name of her shop. Who would have thought the little girl would go all out, bringing her whole family to the salon? Andy, can you do animal designs on my nails? Yuan Yuan's big, bright eyes sparkled as she gazed longingly at the tools on the rack behind Ling Ling. Not to be left out, Xian Xian chimed in. Auntie, I like Ultraman. Can you make those? The three adults burst into laughter. Ling Ling quickly pulled out her design catalog for them to choose from. Gao Sheng's cousin Li Man, seeing her overwhelmed, stepped in to help. Li Man leaned in and whispered, Sis, my brother's never forgotten you all these years. If it hadn't been for my father's health crisis back then and his wish to see a grandchild, my brother might still be single now. Really? Ling Ling's cheeks flushed slightly. Her gaze naturally drifted toward Gao Sheng, who was smoking outside. A corner of her heart seemed to soften. As their eyes met through the glass door, both smiled knowingly. After that, Gao Sheng frequently brought the kids to visit Ling Ling. The four of them walking down the street often led onlookers to assume they were a happy family of four. Seeing her daughter fall in love again after so many years, Ling Ling's mother wasted no time pushing for marriage. Mom, aren't you being too hasty? We need more time to get to know each other. You've known each other for years. What else is there to know? Once you're married, you'll have all the time to understand each other better. Despite her mother's enthusiasm, Ling Ling had her reservations. Over time, she had grown genuinely fond of Yuan Yuan and Xian Xian, cherishing the bond she had with them. But certain behaviors of Gao Sheng's left her uneasy. For instance, every time she visited his home, Gao Sheng insisted she bring gifts for the kids to build rapport with them. At first, she thought it was reasonable, but one time she forgot because of her busy schedule, and Gao Sheng seemed upset, accusing her of being inattentive to the children. Another time, Xian Xian was acting out in public, yelling and running around. Ling Ling couldn't help but reprimand him. Gao Sheng immediately looked displeased, claiming she lacked patience with the kids. And then there were their dates, always scheduled during the week when the kids were in daycare, which often forced Ling Ling to cancel appointments with her clients. These small frictions piled up, making Ling Ling feel increasingly uneasy about the prospect of becoming a stepmother. Honey, you're overthinking it, her mother said. Gao Sheng isn't the penniless young man he was back then. He's got 2 kids and no wife now, of course he dotes on them. That's normal. And anyway, do you really think marriage is just about 2 people loving each other? There are responsibilities, relationships to navigate, and family matters to manage. If you can't handle that, why would anyone marry you? Ling Ling bit her lip in frustration, unable to argue. Her mother went on to say that love and romance eventually give way to the daily grind of life. After all, generations of couples had made it work by compromising and adapting. Ling Ling remembered her childhood when her parents constantly bickered over trivial matters. Her mother would cry and accuse her father of not loving or caring for her, ultimately forcing him to give in. But one day, the argument stopped, and so did the affection. They became little more than partners sharing a roof. It was this fear of her own marriage becoming loveless that had made Ling Ling hold her ground, refusing to settle for less than she wanted. But to others, her determination looked like ingratitude. For the first time, Gaoxing grew exasperated and questioned her. At your age, do you really think it's appropriate to still be chasing fairy tale romance? How can I trust you to take care of my kids when you're this stubborn? Her mother scolded, "You're already in your 30s. If you don't settle down now, you'll end up all alone." Even Ling Rui carefully advised her, "Sis, speaking from experience, chasing feelings alone doesn't make for a sustainable marriage." In a small town like theirs, gossip spread like wildfire. Ling Ling quickly became the subject of ridicule and mockery among relatives and friends. They called her a middle-aged girl, out of touch with reality, wasting her life. They said she was delusional for thinking she could aim so high. Ling Ling glanced at herself in the mirror after hearing the rumors from her best friend. What nonsense. I look amazing. Where did they get off calling me a toad? Her friend nearly spat out her coffee. Oh, my dear, your nerves of steel amaze me. How can you joke at a time like this? Wasn't Gaoxing good to you? Are you really giving up on getting back together? Ling Ling snatched the coffee from her friend's hand and poured it down the sink. Then, with a dramatic flourish, she announced, "There's no use crying over spilled milk. I've decided. I'd rather live my life happily on my own than cling to the past." Her friend burst out laughing and gave her a thumbs up. "You're something else. In all these years, I've never seen you settle for anything." Ling Ling smiled, but deep down she thought, because I've compromised in the past, I know I'll only live freely if I stop now. She carried on with her life, working at her nail salon during the day and unwinding with friends or movies in the evening. Life was calm and peaceful. Gaoxing tried to persuade her a few more times, but ultimately failed. "Gaoxing," she finally told him, "at first, I thought as long as we still had a spark of love, we could reignite the flame. But after spending time together, I realized we've both changed. Our needs don't align anymore, so it's impossible for us to make it work. Instead of wasting time with me, you should move on and find someone else." Disappointed, Gaoxing took 2 steps back. Without a word, he gave her one last resentful look before disappearing into the night. 2 months later, Ling Ling heard from a friend that Gaoxing had remarried. This time, his bride was a divorced woman whose child lived with her ex-husband. "He married her because she doesn't have kids at home," her friend explained. Ling Ling was puzzled. "Oh, come on. But what if they have kids of their own later? Won't it end up the same?" "That's a different story," her friend said with a knowing look. "I heard she was just a low-level employee before marriage and became a stay-at-home mom after. She doesn't even have an income, completely dependent on Gaoxing. Whether they have kids or not is up to him." Ling Ling was stunned, covering her mouth in disbelief. So that was Gaoxing's plan all along. No wonder he had pursued her so persistently after learning she couldn't have children. Looking back, it wasn't just that she had a job and didn't need financial support. She also couldn't have kids of her own, meaning she'd be fully dedicated to treating Yuan Yuan and Xian Xian well. It was a perfect setup for him, likely premeditated from the start. Back then, Ling Ling had been preoccupied with questions of love and affection, never considering these practical factors. She also heard that Gaoxing's second wedding was a simple affair, a small meal with both sets of parents. Her friend felt sorry for the new bride, lamenting how someone without financial independence couldn't even have a proper wedding banquet. But Ling Ling had already made peace with it. She had come to understand that marriage was often like the tale of Zhou Yu and Huang Gai, one willing to fight, the other willing to endure. Most remarried couples had weaknesses that the other could exploit. Unfortunately, Lingling wasn't suited for such scheming. She preferred a free-spirited, uninhibited life. The next time she saw Gaosheng was at a McDonald's. She was treating her nephew to burgers and fries when she ran into Gaosheng with his new family of 4.
It had been a while.
Yuan and Xian had grown taller. They greeted her warmly. "You go order." Gaosheng handed a membership card to his wife, gesturing toward the counter. "You remember what Yuan and Xian like to eat, right? Go get in line." The woman nodded obediently and merged into the long queue. "Long time no see," Gaosheng said. "What's this?" "Grooming your nephew to take care of you in old age." Lingling's nephew looked up at her, confused and uneasy. Lingling slapped away Gaosheng's hand as he tried to pat the boy's head. "Seriously? I'm not that shameless. Unlike some people, I wouldn't dare saddle a child with the burden of my twilight years." "Impressive," Gaosheng said through gritted teeth. "You'll regret this one day. When you die alone in a nursing home, we'll see if you're still smiling then." A few rough years at the end don't outweigh decades of carefree living. If that's all it takes to make you feel superior, your perspective hasn't improved much over the years, has it? At that moment, Gaosheng's wife returned with a tray of food, calling them over to eat. Gaosheng glanced at the tray and snapped, "What's wrong with you? Do you think 2 kids can eat all this?" I thought we could eat some too," the woman mumbled.
Eat, eat, eat.
"That's all you ever do. Are you trying to bankrupt me?" Gaosheng glared at her before storming outside to smoke. The woman sat down with the kids. Her demeanor suddenly changed. She took a big bite out of each burger before handing them to Yuan and Xian. When the kids asked for juice, she drank it herself, claiming it would upset their stomachs. The kids didn't get enough to eat and started crying just as Gaosheng returned. The woman looked innocent and said, "The kids have been coughing lately. The doctor said no sweets. I told them, and now they're upset." While comforting the children, Gaosheng scolded her. "Why didn't you say so earlier? You're useless as a mother. What am I supposed to do with you?" Lingling watched the whole charade and felt even more grateful for her escape. She thought, luckily, she wasn't essential to him, and he was no longer her obsession. Otherwise, life would have been utter chaos.